corporate machine actually runs the Democratic Party. It's not being run by individuals. It's being run by consultants and lobbyists that are part of that machine. So there's a lot of people at the top still making a ton of money, whether we win or lose. And that's what we've got to get past, that cycle of corruption.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
Judith Whitmer, for just some background, is a legend here in Nevada. She was part of the group of progressives that took over the state party apparatus a couple years ago. In response to that, the state party kind of definanced what was happening here. And, you know, that might have had an effect on what happened here with the Harris campaign last go-around, because they weren't as financed as they had been in the past. But I'm going to have Judith kind of walk us through a little bit of that and how that led us to the place we are today. Up there on the stage. All right, everybody, this is Judith. So I gave them a small introduction about what happened with the progressives here, how you guys took over the party, and there was some sort of reactionary stuff that happened. Walk us through some of that, because I think it relates to where we are today a little bit. And I don't know that a lot of people that are just new to maybe the Bernie Sanders movement, new to politics, know about that history. And I think it's important.
Okay, well, as far as the history goes, did you want me to hold it?
Where are you more comfortable?
As far as the history goes, after 2020 Nevada caucuses, because we were still in the caucus system at that point, we actually were able to organize and win big for Bernie in 2020 here in Nevada. A lot of people don't realize that, but Bernie actually won Nevada in 2020. And that was because of the huge organizing effort we did on the ground. In past elections, in past events, starting in 2016, a lot of times we were unable to build on that momentum. But after 2020, we decided we had to do something to keep people organized. So the way we did that was to actually get all of his delegates, which was over 5,000 delegates, to attend the state central committee meeting.
Right.
And so by doing that and by getting them enrolled in the state central committee, we were able to affect the elections of the inter-party Democratic Party workings here in Nevada. But that took a lot of effort. I mean, organizing 5,000 people,
right.
and saying,
that's a big effort.
And getting them to understand the value of working toward that goal of taking over the Democratic Party. And we were successful in 2020 through 2023 in controlling the party and making sure that we conducted everything above board, transparently, and that we were able to get young progressive candidates elected to our state legislature. That was a big deal.
Right.
And that wouldn't have happened without that. Because the structure is there's so much dark money. Even in our Democratic primaries, there's so much dark money that's what we're always fighting against. And that's why we need people to organize around candidates and to get these people elected. Like, the energy here today was amazing.
Yeah.
But what do we do next?
Well, Judith, that's my question for you. So in response to progressives, the more establishment side, just for lack of a better words, they weren't okay with you guys having control of the wheels. So my next question is how deeply did that affect the Harris outcome in the state? Because it was a very thin margin that Donald Trump won by.
Right. So all of that ugliness spilled over in the Democratic Party elections, the Nevada Democratic Party elections. And, you know, they actually worked to make sure that progressives were disenfranchised from the party and that a lot of young people were disenfranchised from the party. So when that happens, guess what? You end up with razor-thin margins in your elections. Like, Senator Rosen barely pulled it out, and we lost Nevada, we lost the governor's race, and we lost the president. So that's a big deal. It's a really big deal in a swing state that for the last few cycles swung blue. Then all of a sudden, you know, vote for Trump. That means you're doing something wrong as a party. And I think that the Democratic Party needs to take a hard look at how they're doing business.
You know, I do think that's part of it. The Republicans win by simply suppressing the progressive vote, don't they? So if if the Democratic Party appeals to its more corporate arm, right, and they talk about putting, I'm not talking about reaching out to grassroots Republican voters that are angry right now about Elon Musk and hurting financially. We're not talking about those individuals. Some of those guys even support Medicare for all, right? We're talking about the corporate interests, the big moneyed interests. We're talking about, that sort of thing where these two parties agree on that level. But if that is what's placated and not this, then it's enough to suppress progressives from coming out, because the progressives are like, I'm not going to be down with somebody that's anti-trans or racist. That's not what I'm here for. It's almost like Bernie made the divide isn't this, it's this. What are your thoughts on that?
A lot deeper than that, though, because the corporate machine actually runs the Democratic Party. It's not being run by individuals. It's being run by consultants and lobbyists that are part of that machine. So there's a lot of people at the top still making a ton of money, whether we win or lose. And that's what we've got to get past, that cycle of corruption. Like, when we have Democratic primaries, people should feel that they have the right to elect their own candidate, not have that choice taken away from them by dark money that comes in and says, okay, we're clearing the field. Only this candidate can run because this candidate has pledged loyalty to the machine. That's what has to stop. And then people will start to feel like they're franchised again to vote. Right now, nonpartisan voters make up the majority of the electorate in Nevada. People can't forget that. The Democratic Party has disenfranchised all those voters, and they're not doing anything to recoup those losses. Like, why aren't we reaching out to nonpartisans? Why aren't we reaching out to small business owners? I mean, it isn't just about corporate in the state. There are a lot of small business owners that the Democratic Party should be engaged with and supporting, as well as our unions. I mean, we have to do that work.
Joining us right now is Val. She is a progressive activist here. Please introduce yourself.
Hi. I'm Val Thomason. I've been a community organizer here for about 8 years, and I actually ran for state assembly as the first DSA candidate in Nevada.
One of the things we're talking about today, it was a constant theme, whether it was AOC, Bernie, that the income inequality is a key driver of what's going on, and it's also something that can be used to cross over to Republican voters, which is very different than the culture war argument that you're hearing from a lot of the establishment Democrats. So, Val, what are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree, because Republicans, a lot of the time, there's two different types. You get the older Republicans, you get the establishment. They are there for the money and because they own homes and things like that. But you also get young guys, or you get young people who are getting really into these culture wars online. Yeah. But at the end of the day, they're making minimum wage. They can't afford their health insurance. They can't afford their house. And they're trying to make up for all that with these ridiculous ideas, that it's immigrants or whatever it is, stopping them from getting a home. So I do think it works if we give them the correct answer.
Right. That's it. Giving them the correct answer. And Judith, that might tie back to some of the points that you were making. Where is the messaging on that? It feels like the Democratic Party has just walked away from that idea, and now the more conservative elements in the Democratic Party are like, just throw trans rights under the bus. This is why we're losing, is because of trans people. But the reality is that's just not true. If that was the case, we wouldn't have 2 trans elected officials in deeply red areas in the country that happened last election cycle. That is, to me, that doesn't seem like it fits. I think what you were saying is more correct, that a lot of the progressive vote, and a lot of those people are independents, right? They're not Democrats, just chose to stay home because they didn't like what they were hearing as far as, placating the neoconservatives. Like Liz Cheney, for example. I think Gaza, we haven't talked about that yet, but I think that was a huge factor in this election.
I definitely think so, too. I think there's a lot of factors, but we can't ignore the nonpartisan voter as well as the non-voter. And I think that that's been to our detriment all along. It's like the Democratic Party, especially in Nevada, and I know in a lot of other states as well, tends to be this sort of insider organization where a lot of people are left on the outside, feeling that they're on the outside. And we talk about recruiting more people to run for office, younger people. But yet we don't make it easy for them. We try to discourage them. The machine, the lobbyists, the consultants, they handpick their candidates. They pour in dark money into the races, and they make it very, very hard for anybody else to break through that. Well, people start to get cynical. People start to get disengaged when they keep coming up against a machine and they feel like their voices aren't heard. When we're not including everyone at the table, that's what happens. As far as trans rights goes, I don't think we should be throwing anybody under the bus. But I also don't think it's an issue that resonates with the American people. Okay. I think a lot of people feel like we're past that. Like, we feel like that some of those laws are settled, but they're being rolled back. They're being attacked now. But a lot of the majority of Americans don't see that. Like, a lot of people feel like, well, why do we care? Why is this an issue? Why are we making this an issue? Right. Well, that's part of the culture wars that the Republicans started, because that ideology, the anti-trans ideology, comes from distinct, cultural differences. And we have to realize that as Democrats, too, that not everybody else is going to share the way we think about things or have our same worldview, and that's okay. But then again, we shouldn't, where's the outrage now with these people that have been arrested for free speech? Where's the Democratic outrage for that? This is supposed to be a country of free speech, and there's no outrage on that issue, and there should be.